During a tense BTS live broadcast, Jimin says one unexpected sentence that makes Jungkook break down and exposes a secret no one saw coming. "Don't say that, Jimin. Please, not here." The words left Jungkook's mouth so quietly that, for a second, even the microphone seemed unable to catch them. Then Jimin looked at him. Not at the camera. Not at the comments racing across the screen. At him. The studio lights were brutally bright, washing the room in white and making every tiny movement visible. The camera indicator glowed red. Thousands of messages were flooding the monitor beside the production desk. Somewhere behind the glass, a staff member had stopped moving altogether. Jimin's fingers tightened around the paper cup in his hands. "I think they deserve to know," he said. Jungkook's face changed. It was almost imperceptible at first. His smile disappeared. His shoulders stiffened. His eyes dropped toward the table as though something beneath it had suddenly become more interesting than the people watching them. Jimin swallowed. Across the room, RM slowly leaned forward. "Jimin," he warned. But Jimin didn't look away from Jungkook. "You've been carrying this alone for too long." Jungkook inhaled sharply. The sound was small, human, terrified, and millions of viewers heard it. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The live broadcast had begun 23 minutes earlier as something completely ordinary. The members had joked about food, teased each other over old stories, argued playfully about who had the worst sleeping habits, and read comments from fans. Jin had made everyone laugh by claiming that Jungkook could probably fall asleep standing up if there were music playing nearby. J-Hope had danced in his chair. Taehyung had stolen Jungkook's drink twice. Suga had complained about the lighting. It was supposed to be easy. A warm evening. A simple reunion. A chance for the 7 members to sit together and talk. But something had been wrong with Jungkook from the moment he entered the room. Jimin had noticed. Of course he had noticed. Jimin always noticed. Jungkook had smiled too much. That was the first thing. When Jungkook was genuinely happy, his smile was careless. It spread across his face without permission. His eyes narrowed, his cheeks lifted, and sometimes he would laugh before anyone had finished speaking. Tonight, his smile stopped exactly where it needed to stop. His eyes rarely joined it. Jimin had watched him for nearly half an hour, pretending not to watch. He had seen Jungkook rub his thumb against the side of his index finger. Once, twice, again. It was an old habit. Whenever Jungkook was nervous, he did that. Whenever he was trying not to say something. Whenever he was afraid that if he opened his mouth, the truth would come out before he could put it back. Jimin knew because he had seen it hundreds of times. Backstage, in rehearsal rooms, in hotel corridors, in cars after difficult schedules. Once, years ago, Jimin had found Jungkook sitting alone on the floor at 3 in the morning, pressing his thumb against his finger over and over again. "What are you doing?" Jimin had asked. "Nothing." "You're doing something." "No." "You're doing the finger thing." Jungkook had stared at his hand. Then he had laughed. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about you." The younger man had smiled then. A real smile. Tonight, there was nothing real about the expression on his face, and Jimin could no longer sit there pretending. "Jungkook," Jungkook looked up. Are you okay?" 7 words, that was all. Yet the entire room seemed to change. Jungkook nodded immediately. "Yeah." "Too fast." Jimin's gaze softened. "You're lying." The smile returned to Jungkook's mouth, but this time it trembled. "No, I'm not." "You are." "I'm really not." "You are." Jungkook gave a nervous laugh. "Hyung, we're live." "I know." "Then don't do this." Jimin's expression tightened. "Do what?" "Make me answer." The room became quieter. Taehyung stopped scrolling through the comments. J-Hope lowered his drink. Jin's playful expression faded. Suga looked toward RM. RM understood immediately. Something had shifted. Something that had nothing to do with the broadcast. Jungkook leaned back in his chair and forced another smile toward the camera. Everyone, don't worry. Jimin Young is just being dramatic. Jimin stared at him. You think I don't know you? Jungkook's smile vanished. The comments were moving so quickly that the staff monitor looked almost like a wall of white rain. Fans were asking what was happening. Why had Jungkook suddenly gone quiet? Why did Jimin look serious? Why did RM keep glancing toward the production booth? But none of them knew what had happened earlier that day. None of them knew that Jungkook had arrived at the studio nearly 2 hours before everyone else. None of them knew that he had stood alone in the empty rehearsal room. None of them knew about the envelope. And none of them knew what was written inside it. Jungkook had found it on the floor near the mirror. No name, no logo, no explanation. Just his name, handwritten across the front. John Jungkook. He had stared at it for almost a minute before opening it. Inside was a single photograph. 7 young men stood together in the picture. They were exhausted, sweaty, laughing, younger. Before everything had become complicated. Before fame had turned every emotion into something that could be photographed, discussed, analyzed, misunderstood. Jungkook had recognized the picture immediately. It had been taken during one of their earliest years. But someone had written a sentence across the back. You promised you would never let them pay for your silence. Jungkook had read it 3 times, then a 4th. His hands had begun shaking. He had sat on the floor. For almost 20 minutes he couldn't move. He had no idea who had left it. He didn't know whether it was a threat, a warning, or simply someone's cruel attempt to reopen an old wound. But there was one thing he knew. The sentence was connected to something he had spent years trying to forget. Something only the members knew about. Something they had all agreed never to discuss publicly. Jungkook had put the photograph back into the envelope. He had hidden it inside his jacket. And he had made one decision. He would not tell anyone. Not tonight, not ever. But Jimin had always been the worst person to lie to, because Jimin didn't listen only to words. He listened to breathing, to silence, to the spaces between sentences. And now he was looking at Jungkook like he had already discovered the truth. Why are you looking at me like that? Jungkook whispered. Because you look scared. I'm not scared. Your hands are shaking. Jungkook immediately placed his hands beneath the table. Jimin saw it. So did everyone else. Jungkook, RM said softly. I'm fine. Don't say that again, Jimin replied. Jungkook looked at him. Why? Because you always say you're fine when you're falling apart. The words hit harder than Jimin expected. Jungkook's lips parted. For a moment, he looked like he might answer. Instead, he looked toward the camera. I'm sorry. Jimin frowned. For what? For making this weird. You didn't make it weird. I did. No. I did. Jungkook. Hyung. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Something old, something painful. Jimin slowly put his cup down. Do you remember what you told me that night? Jungkook froze. Suga's eyes immediately lifted. RM stopped breathing for a second. Jin looked from Jimin to Jungkook. Taehyung whispered, Jimin? But Jimin continued. You said that if something happened, you would tell us. Jungkook's eyes began to shine. Please. You promised. I said please. You promised me. Jungkook looked down. His fingers curled into fists. I was 17. Jimin's expression broke. I know. I didn't know what I was doing. I know. I thought I could fix it. I know. I thought if I kept quiet, nobody would get hurt. Jimin's voice dropped. And did it work? Jungkook didn't answer. The silence answered for him. Jimin leaned forward. No. Jungkook swallowed. No. The word was barely audible. Jimin closed his eyes. Behind them, Suga finally spoke. Stop. Everyone looked at him. Suga's voice wasn't angry. It was tired. Not like this? Jimin's eyes filled with tears. Then when? Suga stared at the table. I don't know. That's the problem. Jimin. When are we supposed to talk about it? RM stood. Let's stop the broadcast. Jungkook immediately shook his head. No. Jungkook. No. Let's take a break. No. His voice cracked. Everyone froze. Jungkook pressed his palms against his knees. No. If we stop now, everyone will know something happened. RM looked at him carefully. And if we continue? Jungkook laughed bitterly. Then maybe I can pretend. Jimin whispered. You shouldn't have to. Jungkook's eyes finally met his. You don't understand. Jimin's expression tightened. I understand more than you think. No. Yes. You weren't the one who... Jungkook stopped. The words died in his throat. Jimin stared at him. The one who... what? Jungkook looked away. His breathing became uneven. The camera was still live. Millions of people were watching. And yet the room suddenly felt impossibly small. Jungkook's chest rose and fell rapidly. Jimin stood. Turn it off. The production staff hesitated. Jungkook shook his head. No. Jungkook? No. Look at me. Jungkook didn't. Look at me. Slowly, he did. Jimin walked around the table. The others watched in silence. Jimin crouched beside Jungkook's chair. You don't have to say anything. Jungkook's eyes were wet. But you said... I know. You said they deserve to know. I was wrong. Jungkook stared at him. Jimin's voice trembled. They don't deserve your pain just because they're curious. That sentence broke something inside Jungkook. His face crumpled.
He covered his mouth. A sob escaped anyway. It was not loud. That somehow made it worse. Jimin immediately reached for him. Jungkook pulled away. No. Okay. Don't. Okay. Jimin stayed where he was. He didn't force him. He simply remained beside him. Jungkook lowered his hands. His eyes were red. I tried so hard. Nobody spoke. I really tried. His voice broke again. I thought if I worked harder, if I smiled more, if I became better, then maybe nobody would remember. Jimin's eyes filled. Remember what? Jungkook shook his head. I can't. It's okay. No, it isn't. He wiped his face with both hands. It isn't okay because I've been pretending for years. Taehyung quietly moved his chair closer. Jin looked down, blinking rapidly. J-Hope's jaw tightened. RM's expression became almost painfully calm. Suga sat perfectly still. Jungkook looked around the room. 7 chairs. 6 faces. People who had known him before the world did. I didn't want you to see me like this. Jin spoke softly. We've seen you worse. Jungkook laughed through his tears. That's not comforting. It wasn't supposed to be. For the first time that night, a small genuine smile appeared. Then it disappeared. Jungkook whispered, I found something today. Jimin's eyes narrowed. What? An envelope. Where? In the rehearsal room. What was inside? Jungkook hesitated. A photograph. RM stood completely still. What photograph? Jungkook looked at him. The room changed again. RM knew. Not everything. But enough. His face lost color. You found it. Jungkook nodded. Suga closed his eyes. Jin whispered no. Taehyung looked confused. What is it? Nobody answered. J-Hope stared at RM. Hyung. RM finally looked at Jungkook. Did you tell anyone? No. Did anyone see it? I don't think so. Where is it? Jungkook touched the inside of his jacket. Here. RM walked toward him. Give it to me. Jungkook hesitated. Why? Because it shouldn't be here. Why? RM stopped. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Jungkook's voice became sharper. Why Hyung? RM looked at the others. Then back at him. Because we buried this for a reason. Jungkook's breathing stopped. Jimin slowly stood. You knew someone still had it. RM shook his head. No. Then who sent it? I don't know. Why now? I don't know. Jungkook laughed softly. There was no humor in it. Of course. RM frowned. What? That's always the answer. He stood. None of you know. Jungkook. You didn't know then. That's not fair. You didn't. We were trying to protect you. From what? RM couldn't answer. Jungkook's voice rose. From what? The room fell silent. Tell me. His shout echoed through the studio. The camera captured everything. Jungkook's tears. Jimin's shaking hands. RM's stunned expression. Suga's lowered eyes. Taehyung's clenched jaw. Jin's trembling breath. J-Hope's hand pressed against his mouth. The viewers saw it all. Jungkook stared at the camera. Then realization crossed his face. They were still live. Oh God. He stepped backward. Turn it off. Nobody moved quickly enough. Turn it off. A staff member finally reached for the control. The screen went black. The silence afterward was enormous. Jungkook stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Jimin approached. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just one step. Then another. Jungkook didn't move away this time. Jimin stopped in front of him. You're not alone. Jungkook stared at the floor. I know. No, you don't. Jimin gently touched his shoulder. You think being strong means carrying everything until your body can't carry it anymore. Jungkook's lips trembled. But that's not strength. Jimin's voice broke. That's loneliness. Jungkook finally looked at him. And something in his face softened. He leaned forward. Jimin caught him. Jungkook buried his face against Jimin's shoulder and began crying again. No camera. No audience. No performance. Just 7 people standing inside a suddenly quiet room, watching one of their own finally stop pretending. Jimin held him tightly. I've got you. Jungkook whispered, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. I ruined the live. We can fix a live. I scared everyone. We're already scared. Jungkook pulled back slightly. Jimin wiped a tear from his cheek. But we're scared because we love you. Jungkook closed his eyes. The sentence stayed there between them. Not dramatic. Not perfect. Just true. Behind them, Suga finally stood. Give me the envelope. Jungkook looked at him. Suga extended his hand. This time, he said quietly, we look at it together. Jungkook hesitated. Then he reached inside his jacket. The envelope appeared between his fingers. He placed it in Suga's hand. Nobody spoke while Suga opened it. The photograph slid onto the table. 7 younger faces stared back at them. For a moment, nobody could breathe. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked at the photograph. And for the first time in years, the past was no longer something hiding behind a locked door. It was sitting directly in front of them. Not screaming. Not demanding. Just waiting to be understood. RM picked up the photograph. His fingers trembled. We should have talked about this a long time ago. Jungkook sat down. Yes. RM looked at him. I was afraid. Jungkook nodded. So was I. Suga sat beside them. Then maybe tonight isn't about answering everything. Jin pulled a chair closer. Maybe it's just about finally admitting that it happened. Taehyung nodded slowly. J-Hope wiped his eyes. And that none of us has to carry it alone anymore. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked back. For several seconds, neither said anything. Then Jungkook gave the smallest nod. Outside the studio, the city continued moving. Cars passed beneath glowing signs. People walked through the streets. Phones buzzed with notifications. The internet was already asking what had happened during the broadcast. But inside that room, nobody cared about the questions yet. For once, there was no audience. There was only truth. And 6 people willing to sit beside Jungkook while he faced it. Jimin rested his hand over Jungkook's. Jungkook didn't pull away. He stared at their hands for a long time. Then he whispered, "Thank you for not letting me disappear." Jimin squeezed his fingers. Never. The room remained quiet. Not the frightening silence from before. A different kind. A silence that finally had room for breathing. Jungkook leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. His cheeks were still wet. His hands were still trembling. The past had not disappeared. The mystery had not been solved. But for the first time, he wasn't facing it alone. And somehow for that night, that was enough. The envelope remained open on the table and nobody dared touch the photograph again until Jungkook suddenly whispered, "There's another one." Jimin's head snapped toward him. "Another what?" Jungkook stared at the floor, his breathing becoming shallow again. "Another photograph." RM's expression hardened. "Where?" "I don't know." Jungkook, think. "I am thinking." The sudden sharpness in his voice made everyone go silent. Jungkook dragged both hands through his hair and stood, packing toward the darkened monitor where the live broadcast had ended. "There was another picture. I saw the corner of it before I opened the envelope." Suga frowned. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I was terrified," Jungkook shouted. "Is that good enough for you?" Suga didn't flinch, but his jaw tight. "No, it is." Jimin immediately stepped between them. "Stop." "No," Jungkook said, turning toward him. "Everyone keeps telling me to stop. Stop talking, stop remembering, stop asking questions, stop looking at the photograph, stop making things worse. I'm tired of stopping." RM slowly pushed the first photograph across the table. "Then don't." Jungkook stared at him. RM's voice was quiet, but there was something unusually firm beneath it. "If you remember something, say it. If you're angry, say it. If you think we failed you, say it. Tonight, nobody gets to silence you." "You're saying that now?" "Yes." "Where were you when I needed to hear it years ago?" RM looked away. The question landed harder than any accusation could have. Jin lowered his eyes. J-Hope swallowed. Taehyung stared at the photograph as if hopping the faces in it might give him an answer. Suga finally spoke. "We were young." Jungkook turned toward him. "So was I." Silence. "That's the part nobody remembers," Jungkook continued. "You were all scared. I know you were trying to protect the group. I know you thought you were protecting me." "Oh, but I was scared too." His voice cracked. "And nobody asked me what I wanted." Jimin closed his eyes. "You're right." Jungkook laughed bitterly. "Don't say it like that." "Like what?" "Like it fixes everything." "It doesn't." Jimin looked directly at him. "I know it doesn't." The room fell silent again. Outside, rain had begun tapping against the tall windows, soft at first, then harder, turning the city lights beyond the glass into blurred streaks of silver. Jungkook walked toward the window. His reflection stared back at him, pale and exhausted. "Someone knew," he said. "Someone knew about that night." RM immediately looked up. "What night?" Jungkook didn't answer. Jungkook, I said someone knew. Who? I don't know. Then what makes you think they knew? Jungkook reached inside his jacket again and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it with shaking fingers. Because I got this before I found the envelope. He turned the screen around. A message appeared from an unknown number. No greeting. No explanation, just one sentence. You still remember what happened after the rehearsal ended. Jimin's face went white. When did you receive that? This morning. Why didn't you tell us? Because another message came 5 minutes later, he scrolled. The second message appeared. If you tell them the photograph becomes public. Nobody moved. That's a threat, J-Hope whispered. Yes, Jungkook said, it is. RM reached for the phone. Give me that. Jungkook handed it over. RM read the messages twice. His expression became increasingly grim. There's a number. Blocked already, Jungkook said. That doesn't mean anything. I know, Suga stood. Did you reply? No, good. But they sent another one. Jungkook's voice became almost inaudible. What did it say? Suga asked. Jungkook looked at Jimin before answering. They said ask Jimin what he promised you. Jimin froze. Every eye in the room turned toward him. What? Jimin whispered. Jungkook stared at him. What did you promise me? Jimin's lips parted but no sound came out. Jimin, RM said carefully. What did you promise him? Jimin lowered his head. His hands began trembling. Jungkook took one step toward him. You remember? Yes. Then tell me. Jimin shook his head. Not like this. Why not? Because I don't know who is watching. There is no camera. That's not what I mean. Jimin looked toward the ceiling, then the windows, then the closed studio door. Someone has been following this for years. Jungkook stared at him. Who? I don't know. Then how do you know? Because I saw them. The words seemed to stop the room itself. RM walked toward Jimin. When? Jimin took a breath. 3 months after the incident. What incident? Taehyung asked. The one nobody wants to name, Jimin said. His voice was trembling now. The night Jungkook disappeared. Jungkook's eyes widened. I didn't disappear. You were gone for 6 hours. I was in the practice building. No, Jimin shook his head. You weren't. Jungkook stared at him. What are you talking about? You were found at the old studio. That's where I went. You told us you went there directly. I did. No, Jimin's eyes filled with tears. You didn't. Jungkook stepped closer. Then where was I? Jimin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Where was I? Jungkook demanded. Jimin looked at RM. RM looked away. Jungkook's breathing became ragged. You all know something. But he answered. You all know something. His voice echoed through the room. And you've been letting me believe I was crazy for remembering it differently. Nobody thought you were crazy, RM said. Then why did you lie? Jungkook asked. RM's silence was enough. Jungkook turned away. Unbelievable. Jimin followed him. Please, don't. Jungkook, don't say my name like you're trying to calm me down. Jimin stopped. I'm not. Jungkook turned. Then what are you doing? Trying to tell you the truth. Finally. Yes. Then tell me. Jimin looked toward the others. I promised you I would never tell anyone what happened after you left the building. Jungkook's expression hardened. I never left the building. Jimin's voice broke. That's what you believed. The room went dead silent. What? Jungkook whispered. Jimin wiped his cheek. You were unconscious when we found you. Jungkook shook his head immediately. No, you were. No, you don't remember. I remember everything. Do you? Yes. Then tell me what happened. Jungkook opened his mouth. He stopped. His face slowly changed. Jimin saw it. You don't remember. I remember leaving rehearsal. What happened next? Jungkook swallowed. What happened next? I went downstairs. Which exit? Jungkook stared at him. Nothing. Which exit? Jimin repeated. The back one. There is no back exit from that floor. Jungkook's eyes widened. There is. There was. I remember it. That's the problem. Jimin stepped closer. You remember something that never existed. Jungkook backed away. Stop. You remember a door that wasn't there. Stop. You remember walking outside. Stop. You remember rain. I said stop. And you remember someone calling your name. Jungkook went completely still. Jimin whispered, you remember a voice. Jungkook's face drained of color. Who was it? Jimin asked. Jungkook stared at the floor. I don't know. Yes, you do. No. Jungkook. I said I don't know. He grabbed the edge of the table, gripping it so hard his knuckles turned white. I heard someone. Jimin nodded slowly. What did they say? Jungkook closed his eyes. The memory came like a flash of cold water, a corridor, flickering lights, the smell of dust and rain, his own shoes scraping against concrete, a voice behind him, a hand on his shoulder, then darkness. Jungkook opened his eyes. They said my name. Anything else? No. You're sure? I'm not sure about anything anymore. Jimin reached for him. Jungkook pulled away. You knew. I knew part of it. You knew I didn't remember correctly. Yes, and you let me live like that. I was trying to protect you. Jungkook laughed, but tears rolled down his face. Everyone always says that. Jimin flinched. Because it's true. Then why does being protected feel so much like being betrayed? No one answered. The rain outside grew heavier. Suga walked toward the window and stared into the darkness. Because sometimes protection becomes another kind of prison. Jimin looked at him. You knew too. Yes. Jungkook turned. How much? Suga hesitated. Enough. That's not an answer. I knew we didn't find you where you said you were. Where did you find me? At the old studio. Who was there? Suga looked at him. No one. Jungkook's breathing slowed. No one when we arrived. But you said someone brought me there. I never said that. Jimin did. Jimin nodded. Because I thought someone had. Why? Because there were footprints. Whose? We didn't know. RM finally spoke. There were 2 sets. Jungkook turned toward him. Mine and someone else's. Yes. And you never told the police. We couldn't. Jungkook stared at him in disbelief. Why? RM looked exhausted. Because the building wasn't supposed to be occupied. That makes no sense. It does if you understand who owned it. Who? RM didn't answer immediately. J-Hope whispered. The company knew. Everyone turned toward him. What? Jungkook asked. J-Hope's eyes were wet. The company knew someone had access to the building. Who? A former staff member. Jungkook stared at him. Name? I don't remember. You do. I remember his face. Then tell me. J-Hope looked at RM. Hyung. RM closed his eyes. Say it. J-Hope swallowed. His name was Han Seok-min. Jungkook repeated the name silently. Something about it felt familiar. Why do I know that name? Nobody answered. Why do I know that name? Jungkook demanded. Jimin whispered. Because you met him. Jungkook stepped backward. When? Before you disappeared. Where? At the studio. Why? He said he had something for you. Jungkook's eyes widened. What? Jimin looked toward the photograph. A recording. The word landed like a gunshot. A recording of what? Jungkook asked. Jimin's voice shook. You. Doing what? Talking. To him, yes. About what? Jimin looked away. About leaving. Jungkook stopped breathing. Leaving what? The group. The room exploded. What? Taehyung shouted. You were going to leave. No, Jungkook said immediately. I never said that. Jimin stepped toward him. You did. No, you told him you couldn't do it anymore. No, you told him you were tired. Everyone was tired. You told him you wanted to disappear. Jungkook's eyes filled. I was 17. I know. I was scared. I know. Then why are you making it sound like I betrayed everyone? I'm not, Jimin shouted. I'm telling you what happened. You weren't supposed to tell anyone, Jungkook shouted back. You promised, Jimin's face collapsed. I promised to keep your secret, not to keep you trapped inside it. Jungkook stared at him. What does that mean? It means I kept quiet because you asked me to, but when I realized you couldn't remember the whole night, I got scared. Scared of what? That the missing memories weren't an accident. Everyone went still. What do you mean? RM asked. Jimin looked at him. I think someone wanted Jungkook to forget. Suga turned sharply. That's impossible. Is it? Jimin asked. Then explain the second photograph. Nobody spoke. There was another picture, Jimin continued. A photograph of Jungkook unconscious on the floor. Jungkook's eyes widened. What? I saw it once. Where? In Seok-min's phone. You saw him take it. No, I saw it when he showed it to me. Why would he show you? Jimin looked at Jungkook. Because he wanted me to understand that he could make the story disappear. Jungkook's lips trembled. He threatened you. Yes. What did he want? Silence. From you? From all of us. RM's face hardened. Why? Jimin shook his head. I never found out. You're lying, Jungkook whispered. Jimin stared at him. What? You know. I don't. You know. Jungkook stepped closer. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't look at me like that. Jimin's eyes filled again. There was a contract. What contract? A confidentiality agreement. Between whom? The company and Seok-min. About me? About the incident. Jungkook shook his head. That doesn't make sense. It does. No, he had access to your medical records. Why? Jimin didn't answer. Why? Jungkook shouted. Because after we found you, you were taken to a clinic. Jungkook froze. I was never at a clinic. Jimin nodded. That's what we were told. Who told you? The company. What clinic? We never found out. What? The records were removed. By whom? We don't know. Jungkook looked around the room. And you all accepted that. Jin suddenly slammed his palm onto the table. We were 20-something-year-olds trying to survive. Everyone turned toward him. Jin's face was wet with tears. You think we had power, you think we could walk into an office and demand answers. We were terrified. We had schedules, contracts, managers, lawyers, people telling us what was safe to say and what wasn't. And every time we asked about that night, we were told the same thing. His voice broke. Forget it. Jungkook stared at him. Jin continued, so we did, or we tried. Jungkook's eyes softened. Hyung, Jin shook his head. No, don't forgive me yet. The words silenced everyone. I don't deserve that tonight. J-Hope lowered his head. Neither do I. Taehyung looked toward Jungkook. I was angry with you. Jungkook frowned. What? After that night? Why? Because I thought you wanted to leave us. Jungkook stared at him. I never wanted to leave. I know that now. Why didn't you ask me? Taehyung's eyes filled. Because I was afraid you'd say yes. Jungkook looked away. Taehyung wiped his face. I thought if I asked, you'd confirm everything I was afraid of. Jungkook whispered, so you hated me instead. I never hated you. You stopped talking to me. Because I didn't know how to talk to you without admitting I was scared. Jungkook closed his eyes. We were all so stupid. Suga gave a faint, painful smile. We were young. That's not an excuse. No, Suga said. It's an explanation. The room quieted. Then Jungkook's phone vibrated. Everyone froze. Jungkook looked down. Another message. He didn't want to open it. Jimin saw his face. Don't. Jungkook opened it anyway. A photograph appeared. It showed the old studio corridor. The image was dark and grainy. A timestamp sat in the corner. The night of the incident. Beneath it was one sentence. You have 10 minutes to remember. Jungkook's fingers went cold. What does that mean? J-Hope whispered. Another message arrived. If you don't, ask Jimin what happened before he found you. Jimin's face went completely white. Jungkook slowly turned toward him. What happened before you found me? Jimin didn't answer. Jimin, I can't. You have to. Not here. Why? Because you don't want to know. That's my choice. Jimin shook his head. No, Jungkook stared at him. You don't get to decide that anymore. Jimin's eyes closed. You're right. He took a breath. Before we found you, I got a call. From who? Seokmin. What did he say? He said you were in danger. Why did he call you? Because I was the only one he trusted. Jungkook stared. Trusted you? He said you had told him something. What? Jimin swallowed. You said someone inside the company was selling information about us. RM's expression changed. What? Jimin nodded. You were investigating it. Jungkook stared at him. I don't remember. I know. What information? Schedules, personal numbers, private recordings. Suga's eyes narrowed. That was happening. Yes. And Jungkook knew. He suspected. Jungkook looked at the photograph. Why would I investigate that alone? Jimin's voice was soft. Because you thought nobody would believe you. Jungkook laughed weakly. Apparently I was right. RM shook his head. No, Jungkook looked at him. We should have believed you. But you didn't. No, RM's voice cracked. We didn't. The admission hung in the air, and that's the part I regret most. Jungkook slowly sat down. His strength seemed to drain from him. What happened after Jimin got the call? Suga asked. Jimin looked at him. I went to find Jungkook. Alone? Yes. Why? Because Seokmin told me not to bring anyone. And you listened? Suga's voice became sharper. I thought he had Jungkook. You thought he kidnapped him? Yes. Why didn't you call the police? Jimin looked down. Because he sent me a photograph. Of Jungkook? Yes. Alive? Yes. Then what? He said if I contacted anyone, Jungkook would disappear. Jungkook stared at him. You believed him. I had no reason not to. And when you arrived, you weren't there. Where was Seokmin? Gone. Then how did you find me? Jimin's voice dropped. I followed the sound of a phone. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. My phone? Yes. Where was it? In a stairwell. And me? Jimin looked at him. At the bottom. Jungkook covered his mouth. Unconscious. Yes. Was I injured? There was blood. Min's voice shook. But it wasn't yours. Nobody moved. Jungkook slowly lowered his hand. Whose was it? Jimin shook his head. I don't know. Then why didn't you tell me? Because the doctor told us not to. Which doctor? Jimin looked at RM. RM whispered, Dr. Han. Jungkook's face changed. Han, yes. Seokmin, we don't know if they're related. Jungkook stood abruptly. That's not a coincidence. Suga grabbed the table. Sit down. No, Jungkook. No, I remember that name. What? Jimin stepped closer. Jungkook stared at nothing. Han Seokmin. His voice was barely audible. I remember him saying something. What? He said. Jungkook's eyes closed. He said, your brother asked me to watch you. Everyone froze. Brother, Taehyung whispered. Jungkook, you don't have a brother. I know. Then who was he talking about? Jungkook shook his head. I don't know. His breathing became faster. But I remember another voice. Jimin grabbed his shoulders. Whose? Jungkook stared at him. Yours. Jimin froze. Mine. You were there. I was? Yes. What did I say? Jungkook's face twisted as the memory surfaced. You said don't tell him yet. Jimin stepped backward as though struck. No, Jungkook opened his eyes. You said it. No, you said if he remembers everything falls apart. Jimin's face crumpled. I don't remember saying that. But I do. Jungkook, why? Jimin covered his mouth. I don't know. Why did you tell someone not to tell me? I don't know, Jimin shouted. I swear I don't. Jungkook stared at him. Then maybe someone changed your memory too. Jimin went silent. Suga looked at RM. This is bigger than we thought. RM nodded. Yes. J-Hope whispered, what are we supposed to do? Suga looked at the photograph. Find the second one. Jungkook shook his head. No. Everyone looked at him. We don't need to find it. He pulled out his phone again. 'Cause I think I know where it is. Jimin's eyes widened. Where? Jungkook turned the screen toward them. The image from the anonymous sender was still open. In the corner of the photograph, barely visible beneath the timestamp, was a reflection in a glass door. A figure stood behind the camera. Jungkook zoomed in. Everyone leaned closer. The face was blurred, but the clothing was clear. A black jacket, a silver watch, a distinctive ring. Jimin's breathing stopped. I know that ring. RM stared at him. Who? Jimin whispered the name. Someone who shouldn't have been there. Jungkook looked at him. Who? Jimin raised his eyes. Our former manager. The room fell silent. He's dead, Jin whispered. Jimin shook his head slowly. That's what we were told. No one spoke for several seconds, then Jungkook's phone vibrated again. One final message appeared. Now you remember. Jungkook stared at the screen, but this time he didn't cry. He simply looked exhausted. Jimin reached for his hand. Jungkook let him take it. Whatever happens next, Jimin whispered, we face it together. Jungkook looked at all 6 members. No more secrets, RM nodded. No more secrets, Suga nodded. No more silence. Jin wiped his eyes. No more pretending. J-Hope took a slow breath. No more protecting each other by lying. Taehyung squeezed Jungkook's shoulder. And no more making you carry it alone. Jungkook looked down at their hands. For years, he had believed the truth was something dangerous, something that would destroy everything if it ever escaped. But sitting there with the people he had loved since he was barely old enough to understand what fame meant, he finally realized something painful and strangely comforting. The truth had not destroyed them. The silence had. And when the rain finally softened against the windows, Jungkook rested his head against Jimin's shoulder, exhausted but awake, while the others remained beside them until the studio lights dimmed and the night outside became quiet. For the first time since the mysterious messages began, nobody tried to escape the past. They simply sat with it together, letting the silence become something gentler than fear. Tell me he's not alive. Jungkook's voice was barely more than a whisper, but every person in the room heard it. Jimin looked at him, and for several seconds he could not answer. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the windows covered in trembling droplets that caught the pale studio lights. The photograph remained on the table between them, the blurred figure reflected in the glass door staring back like a ghost from a life they had all tried to bury. Jimin, Jungkook said again, louder this time. Tell me he's not alive. Jimin swallowed. I don't know. Jungkook laughed once, a hollow sound that seemed to hurt his throat. That's becoming everyone's favorite answer. I'm not trying to avoid you. Then stop avoiding me. Jimin looked toward RM. We need to be careful. Jungkook immediately turned on him. Careful, his eyes widened. You want to be careful again, RM's expression tightened. I mean we need to understand what we're dealing with before we accuse someone. Someone who was supposed to be dead. Exactly. And you think I should sit here calmly while we figure it out? I think you should sit because you're shaking. Jungkook looked down at his hands. They were trembling. He clenched them. I'm fine. Jimin almost smiled despite the tension. Don't. Jungkook looked at him. What? You know better than to say that now. Jungkook's jaw tightened. I'm trying. I know. Then don't correct me. Okay. The room fell quiet again. Suga picked up the photograph and studied the reflection. The ring is distinctive. J-Hope nodded. He wore it every day. Jin stared at the picture. But if he's alive, why would he wait this long? Maybe he didn't, Suga replied. Everyone looked at him. What do you mean? Taehyung asked. Suga placed the photograph down. Maybe someone else has been sending these messages for years. Jungkook frowned. Then why now? Because something changed. RM's eyes narrowed. What? Suga looked at Jungkook. You remembered. Jungkook's expression changed. You think they're afraid I'll remember everything. Yes, but I don't remember everything. You remembered enough. Jimin slowly sat down. That could be why the messages started. What changed? J-Hope asked. Nothing changed with us, Jin said. Something changed with him, Suga replied. Maybe a memory came back. Jungkook stared at the floor. I had a dream 3 weeks ago. Everyone turned toward him. What kind of dream? Jimin asked. Jungkook hesitated. The same hallway. RM sat forward. The old studio. Yes. What happened? I was walking. Alone, I thought I was. And then, Jungkook rubbed his thumb against his finger again. Jimin noticed but said nothing. There was a door, Jungkook whispered. A door at the end of the hallway. The back exit, Jimin asked. Jungkook shook his head. No, another one. Did you open it? I couldn't. Why? Someone was holding it from the other side. Jin's face tightened. Did you see who? No. Did they speak? Yes. What did they say? Jungkook closed his eyes. They said you promised. Jimin's breathing changed. Promised what? I don't know. Anything else? Jungkook opened his eyes. They said your name. Jimin went still. Mine, yes. What did they say? They said Jimin knows where the truth is buried. Nobody moved. Then RM slowly stood. We're leaving. Jungkook looked at him. Where? Somewhere private. We're already private. No. RM pointed toward the ceiling. We don't know who has access to this room. Suga nodded. He's right. J-Hope grabbed his jacket. What about the staff? We'll tell them the broadcast ended normally, RM said. Nobody discusses what happened. Jungkook laughed bitterly. You really think you can control that? RM looked at him. No. Then why try? Because we need time. Time is exactly what whoever sent those messages wants us to lose. RM stared at him. You're right. That admission stopped Jungkook. RM took a breath. So let's stop reacting. He walked to the door. We start investigating. They moved quickly. No managers were called. No staff were brought in. The 7 members left through a private corridor used for equipment deliveries, keeping their heads down as they entered the underground parking area. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Their footsteps echoed against concrete. Jungkook walked between Jimin and Suga, his hands buried in his pockets. Every few seconds he looked behind them. You're doing it again, Jimin whispered. What? Looking back. I feel like someone is following us. I know. Then why are you so calm? I'm not calm. Jungkook looked at him. You look calm. Jimin gave him a tired smile. I've been practicing. Since when? Since I learned that panicking makes you panic more. Jungkook looked away. Sorry. Stop apologizing. Sorry. Jimin laughed quietly. You're impossible. You love me anyway. The words slipped out before Jungkook could stop them. Jimin froze for half a second, then smiled. Unfortunately, for a brief moment the tension eased. Then Suga's voice came from ahead. Enough. They all looked at him. He pointed toward the far end of the parking lot. A black sedan was parked in a space that should have been empty. Was that there earlier? RM asked. Jin shook his head. No. Do you recognize it? J-Hope whispered. Jungkook stared at the windshield. Something about the car felt familiar. Yes. Everyone looked at him. Where? Jungkook swallowed. I don't know. Think. I am thinking. He took a step forward. Suga caught his arm. Don't. Jungkook stopped. Why? Because if someone wants us to approach that car, we shouldn't. What if someone is inside? Then they can come to us. Suddenly the driver's door opened. Everyone froze. A man stepped out. He wore a dark coat. His face was partially hidden beneath a cap. He didn't approach. He simply stood beside the vehicle and looked at them. Jungkook's heart began pounding. Jimin moved closer to him. RM stepped forward. Who are you? The man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat. Suga immediately stepped between him and the others. Don't. The man stopped. Then he pulled out a small envelope and dropped it onto the ground. He turned, got back into the car, and drove away. Nobody moved until the tail lights disappeared around the corner. Nobody touch it, RM said. Jungkook stared at the envelope. That's another one. I know. What if it has answers? What if it has a trap? We can't leave it. Suga pulled a pair of gloves from the emergency kit in the trunk. I'll get it. He carefully picked up the envelope and placed it inside a plastic bag. Where are we going? Taehyung asked. RM looked at the others. My place. No, Jimin said. Everyone turned toward him. Not your place. RM frowned. Why? If someone has been monitoring us, that's the first place they'll expect. Suga nodded. He's right. Then where? Jimin thought for a moment. The old recording room. Jungkook looked at him. The one nobody uses. Exactly. Why there? Because nobody remembers it exists. They drove separately, taking different routes and turning off their phones once they were inside the vehicles. Jungkook sat beside Jimin in the back seat. For several minutes neither spoke. The city moved outside, blurred by darkness and wet roads. Finally Jungkook said, "You really thought I wanted to leave?" Jimin looked at him. "Back then, yes. Why? Because you told me. Did I? Yes. Or did someone make you believe I did?" Jimin looked away. "I don't know anymore. That's frightening." "I know." Jungkook rested his head against the window. "I hate not trusting my own memories." Jimin quietly said, "Then trust what you know now." "What do I know?" "You know we're here." Jungkook looked at him. "You know we believe you. Do you?" "Yes." "Even if I remember something that makes you look bad?" Jimin didn't hesitate. "Yes. Even if it makes all of us look bad?" "Yes. Even if it changes everything?" Jimin looked directly into his eyes. "Especially then." Jungkook looked down. "I wish you had said that years ago." "So do I." When they reached the old recording room, the building felt abandoned. Dust covered the corridor. The air smelled of old carpet, metal, and stale wood. The 7 members entered one by one. RM locked the door behind them. Suga placed the envelope on a table. "Nobody opens it until we're ready." Jungkook stared at it. "I'm ready." "Are you?" "No." Suga nodded. "Good." He looked around. "At least you're honest." Jin sat down. "Open it." Suga carefully cut the envelope. Inside was a small USB drive and a folded sheet of paper. RM opened the paper first. There were only 4 words. "You owe him the truth." Jimin's face changed. "Him?" Taehyung asked. "Who is him?" Nobody answered. Suga inserted the USB into an old computer. It flickered. A single audio file appeared. No name, no date, just a string of numbers. RM clicked it. Static filled the room, then a voice emerged. "If you're hearing this, it means Jungkook remembers." Jungkook went rigid. The voice was male, older, calm, familiar. "You may think you know what happened that night. You don't. You may think Jungkook was the victim. He was, but he wasn't the only one." Jimin covered his mouth. "Turn it off." Jungkook grabbed his wrist. "No." The recording continued. There were 2 people responsible for the incident. One of them was never identified. The other one made sure you would forget. Jungkook whispered, "Who?" The recording went silent for several seconds. Then the voice said, "Ask Jimin." The audio ended. The room exploded. "What the hell?" Suga shouted. "Why does it keep saying my name?" Jimin cried. "Because you know something," Jungkook said. "I don't." "Then why?" "I don't know." "Stop saying that." Jungkook slammed his fist onto the table. "I need one answer." Jimin stood. "I don't have one." "You have something." "I have fragments," Jimin shouted back. "That's all I have." "Then give me the fragments." "I'm trying. Try harder." "I am." Their voices echoed through the room. RM stepped between them. "Enough." Jungkook shoved his chair backward. "No, I'm done with enough." He pointed at Jimin. "You keep telling me you're protecting me, but every time you protect me, you hide another piece of my life." Jimin's face crumpled. "Because I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of losing you." "You almost lost me anyway." Jimin stopped breathing. Jungkook immediately regretted the words, but they were already there. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "No," Jimin said. "Don't take it back." "I didn't mean." "You did." Jimin wiped his tears. "And you're right." He looked around the room. "All of you are right. We failed him." RM shook his head. "Jimin." "No, Namjoon." Jimin's voice was shaking. "Let me say it." He turned toward Jungkook. "That night I found you, you were unconscious. There was blood. There was another phone beside you, and when I picked it up, it was already recording." Jungkook stared. "Recording what?" "Our conversation." "Whose conversation?" "Mine and Seokmin's." Jungkook's eyes widened. "Play it." Jimin shook his head. "I don't have it." "Why?" "Because I destroyed it." "You destroyed evidence?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because he threatened you." "With what?" Jimin's voice dropped. "With the truth." "What truth?" "That someone inside our circle had been helping him." Everyone went silent. "Someone inside our circle," RM repeated. "Yes, who?" "I never found out. But you said 2 people were responsible." "The recording said that." "Then who was the second?" Jimin shook his head. "I don't know." Jungkook stared at him. "Maybe you did." Jimin's eyes widened. "What?" "Maybe that's why you can't remember." Jimin froze. "Maybe they erased it from you too." Nobody spoke. Suga slowly walked toward the computer. "Play the file again." RM nodded. The recording restarted, static, the voice. "If you're hearing this," then a sudden glitch. A second voice appeared beneath it, almost inaudible, a whisper. "Jungkook, don't trust." The recording cut out. Suga rewound it. "Again." He played it. The whisper became slightly clearer. Jungkook, don't trust, then static. Don't trust who? J-Hope asked. Suga isolated the audio. They listened again. The final word emerged. Jimin. Jimin went completely still. Jungkook looked at him. Nobody moved. No, Jungkook whispered. Jimin shook his head. That's not me. How do you know? Because I would never. Would you remember? Jimin stopped. The question devastated him. Jungkook stared at the floor. That's what scares me. Suddenly the computer screen flickered. The audio file disappeared. The USB disconnected itself. What? RM grabbed the computer. It's gone. Impossible. Suga checked the port. Someone accessed it remotely. J-Hope stepped backward. Then someone knows we're here. The lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the room. Jungkook heard Jimin inhale sharply beside him. Nobody move, Suga said. A sound came from the corridor. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Everyone froze. Then a voice came through the door. Jimin. Jungkook's blood ran cold. The voice was familiar. Jimin looked like he had seen a ghost. No, he whispered. The voice came again. Jimin opened the door. RM moved toward the handle. Suga grabbed his arm. Don't. Who is it? Jimin whispered. The voice answered. You know who I am. Jungkook stared at Jimin. Who? Jimin shook his head violently. I don't know. The voice laughed softly. Still lying. Jimin covered his ears. Stop. Jungkook moved toward him. Jimin, don't listen. Who is it? I don't know. The door rattled. Someone tried the handle. Suga pushed a cabinet in front of it. Everyone stay back. A hard impact shook the door. Taehyung grabbed a metal stand. Jin moved beside him. What are we doing? J-Hope whispered. Waiting, Suga said. Another impact. The door frame cracked. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's hand. We're together. Jimin looked at him, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, not now. If something happens, nothing is happening. Jungkook, no. Another impact. The cabinet moved. RM shouted, everybody back. The door burst open. A man stepped into the room. He was older than Jungkook remembered, but the face was unmistakable. Dark eyes, silver ring, a scar near his eyebrow. Jimin stopped breathing. Jungkook stared at him. The man smiled. It's been a long time. Jungkook's body went cold. Seokmin, the man nodded. You remember. Jimin moved in front of Jungkook. Don't touch him. Seokmin laughed, still protecting him. Stay away. You really thought destroying the recording would end this? Jimin's voice shook. I did what I had to do. You did what you were told. Jungkook looked at Jimin. What does he mean? Jimin shook his head. Don't listen to him. Seokmin stepped closer. Ask him what happened after he found you. I already did. No, you asked him what happened before. You never asked what happened after. Jungkook's heart pounded. What happened after? Seokmin smiled. Jimin made a choice. Jimin whispered, stop. He chose you. Jungkook looked confused. What does that mean? He chose to erase your memory. Silence. No, Jungkook whispered. That's impossible. Seokmin looked at Jimin. Tell him. Jimin was crying now. I didn't know what else to do. Tell him. I was trying to save him. Tell him, Seokmin shouted. Jimin flinched. I asked the doctor to make sure he wouldn't remember the night. Jungkook's face went blank. You, Jimin stepped toward him. I thought if you forgot, you could live. You made me forget. I begged them. You made me forget. Yes. Jungkook's voice became terrifyingly calm. You made me forget my own life. I was trying to save you. You had no right. I know. You had no right, Jungkook screamed. Jimin sobbed. I know. Jungkook backed away. Get away from me. Jimin stopped. Seokmin smiled faintly. Now you understand. Suga stepped forward. You manipulated him. I told the truth. You threatened him. I gave him a choice. RM's eyes hardened. What choice? Seokmin looked at Jungkook. Forget what happened or watch everyone you love suffer for it. Jungkook stared at him. What did you do? Nothing. Then why did I need to forget? Seokmin's expression changed. Because the person who caused the accident wasn't me. Everyone froze. Who? Jungkook asked. Seokmin looked at Jimin. Ask him. Jimin shook his head. No. Jungkook turned toward him. Who? Jimin's tears fell silently. Jungkook, who? It was me. The words shattered the room. Jungkook stared at him. What? Jimin's voice barely existed. I was driving. Nobody breathed. That night, Jimin continued, I was driving the car. Jungkook's face went pale. What car? You don't remember. What happened? We were arguing. About what? You wanted to tell everyone about the information you found. Jimin wiped his face. I told you to wait. You refused. You got out of the car. Jungkook shook his head. I wasn't in a car. You were. No, you were. Then why don't I remember? Because you hit your head. And the blood, mine, Jimin looked down. I had a cut on my forehead. Jungkook stared at him. You were driving. Yes. You lost control. Yes. And I was injured. Yes. Then why did everyone say I was found at the studio? Jimin's voice broke. Because Seokmin moved you. Jungkook looked at Seokmin. Why? Because the accident wasn't supposed to happen. What do you mean? The brakes had been tampered with. Everyone went silent. Someone tried to kill us, Jimin whispered. Jungkook's eyes widened. And you knew? I found out later. Then why did you let me forget? Jimin covered his face. Because I thought the person responsible would come after you again. So you erased my memory. Yes. And lied to me. Yes. For years. Yes. Jungkook stared at him for a long time. Then he whispered, I hate you. Jimin's face crumpled. I know. I hate that you did this. I know. I hate that part of me still loves you. Jimin closed his eyes. I know. Jungkook turned away, tears falling silently. Seokmin watched them. Now you understand why I sent the messages. RM glared at him. You didn't send them to help him. No. Then why? Seokmin's smile disappeared. Because the person who tampered with the brakes is still alive. Jungkook slowly turned around. Who? Seokmin looked toward the door. Someone you trust. Nobody spoke. Then he walked away. Suga moved to stop him, but Seokmin said one final sentence without turning. And Jimin isn't the person you should be afraid of. The door closed. Silence filled the room. Jungkook stood motionless. Jimin looked at him, terrified of what he might say. Finally, Jungkook whispered, I don't know what to believe. Jimin nodded through his tears. Then don't believe me tonight. Jungkook looked at him. What? You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to trust me. Just don't make yourself decide everything tonight. Jungkook looked away. I need time. Take it. I need space. Jimin's lips trembled. I'll give it. Jungkook walked toward the window. The city lights were beginning to fade beneath the approaching dawn. The night had exhausted all of them. Nothing was solved. Too many questions remained. The identity of the person who tampered with the brakes was still hidden. Seokmin's motives remained unclear. The missing memories were only beginning to return, and the truth about that night had turned out to be more painful than any of them expected. But when Jungkook finally sat down, Jimin did not follow him. He stayed several steps away, giving him the space he had asked for. After a long silence, Jungkook quietly said, You can stay. Jimin looked up. Are you sure? Jungkook nodded. I don't want to be alone. Jimin slowly sat across from him. Neither touched the other. Neither apologized again. Neither tried to fix what could not be fixed in one night. They simply remained there while the first light of morning entered through the dusty windows. Jungkook stared at the photograph on the table. 7 younger faces smiled back at him, unaware of how much pain the future would contain. He reached out and turned the photograph face down. We'll find out who did it, he whispered. Jimin nodded. Together? Jungkook hesitated. Then after several seconds he answered, We'll see. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it was not goodbye either. And for that fragile morning that was enough.